Welcome to 365 Brothers. I'm your host, Robin Shine. This podcast introduces you to Black men from across the United States, their wisdom, their experiences, their joys. It also shares some of the triumphs after diversity. Basically, this podcast is about the humanity of Black men, just as it could be about the humanity of women, of white, of brown, of yellow. I focus on Black men in this podcast because of the statistics, the facts that Black men are more likely to be stopped by the police without a justifiable cause. Now, if you're questioning that, this podcast is the place for you to be. I ask each man the same 11 questions, and one of them asks about their interactions with law enforcement. The point of that question is to show the commonality in who is stopped, regardless of profession, regardless of age. The other thing is to just share the diversity of experiences of Black men outside of what you see on TV, in movies, outside of the stereotypes and the tropes. Now, if you're wondering, it is a subtle process. So don't just listen to one episode. I recommend listen to 5. When you listen to at least 5, you get it. You will truly get it. And after that, you'll either be hooked or not. But this is a 5-episode minimum, so get ready, get comfy. This is 365 Brothers. Welcome.
Today, we're speaking with an educator and entrepreneur. He is co-owner of Cultivating Hope, an educational consulting company. Also, he and his wife founded Unearth and Empower, and that's about providing pathways to college, entrepreneurship, and employment through both education and the arts, and that is based out of Compton. And as if that's not enough, it turns out this brother can cook. He also is the owner of City Catering, and I love this. Smoked meats, sides, and sweets. Now, I know everybody can see the picnic tables, and I know your mouth is watering because mine is, and I just ate lunch. So who we are speaking with today is Barak Bomani. Welcome, Barak.
Wow, thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
What would you like to share with our listeners so they can get to know you a little better?
So I am a husband, as you pointed out. I'm a father. I have 2 sons. I'm a son, a brother, a mentor, educator, a worshiper. I lead worship at my church since 2010. I'm a lover of tennis. I've been playing ever since junior high. I'm a songwriter. Got an opportunity to do an album in 2012 with a group called Renew. And in 2021, I'll be a first-time author
Nice.
where I will be completing a book called Where in the Hell is God? And I am from Oakland. I'm from the town, as we call it, yes. Born in San Francisco, but raised in Oakland.
Okay.
And, love my roots there. Had a big, that was a big foundation of my shaping of my life, is being a part of Oakland and the East Bay. So yeah, just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Let's go ahead and dive in. Barak, what's your favorite song, either now or all time, and why?
Man, okay, so for somebody who grew up in the 70s, that is a really difficult question. But I will say Donny Hathaway's Someday We'll All Be Free is probably one of my top favorite songs. Donny's voice can embody joy, pain, curiosity, hope, and rebellion. and his vulnerability is really intoxicating. But one of my former students who graduated from the high school where I was principal actually died in 2000 and I believe it was 2008. And her father asked me to sing the song at the funeral.
Wow.
And so that alone made it my favorite song, just because of the memory of who she is, who he is, and his family and what they represented. So I would say that someday we'll all be free, and obviously the message of the song as well.
So if I can ask, you said of what the family represents. What is that?
They're just, first of all, I met, let me tell the full story. So I was a principal, and one of my teachers was teaching English, and who I had actually met in Southern California when I first started teaching. And so when I had the opportunity to become a principal, I asked if he would come teach at the school.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a relationship that stems, all the way back to like 1997, 1998. And so they represent family to me. He's a very close friend, really thoughtful pastor. And to lose his daughter is just, that's one of the worst things that can happen to somebody. But that's why they're special to me.
Got it. I'm glad I asked. What's a favorite childhood memory and why?
I would have to say cooking and eating with my family.
Mm.
That is my favorite childhood memory.
Take us to one of these moments. Tell us about it. Okay. One of your favorite times.
So my mom's mom, my grandmother, who is no longer with us, I called her Granny, and I would go over to her house. We lived in Oakland and she lived in San Francisco, so we'd travel across the bay. And basically while my mom was working, she dropped us off. We stayed at grandma's. And my grandmother was a really good cook. And I would just be there in the kitchen. So I wouldn't be outside playing or whatnot. I'd be right there, stripping off the collard greens, and she'd send me on store runs to go get things. And mind you, I'm like 10 years old, so I'm not that old, but mm-hmm. She would give me descriptions of what to get, what not to get. And so through this process of learning how to cook collard greens, fried chicken, cornbread, mac and cheese, things of that nature, sweet potato pies, pound cakes. I was just a student at her side, and it was one of the most amazing things because I didn't realize that I was learning how to cook. I was just enjoying the moment with my grandmother, right? And so it was just a really good time. And anytime that I think about her, I think about the food. And then when I went to college, I had an opportunity to cook as well for lots of events, and I would bring her sweet potato pie recipes. I remember calling her and said, "Granny, what you put in the sweet potato pie? Like, what are the measurements?" And she couldn't tell me not one measurement. Like, oh.
That is how they cooked in the day. I hear that over and over again. They just knew. They just literally, they could take the 2 pound or 5 pound of flour sack, and then they just, shake it over, and then stop. And they're like, "Yep, that's enough."
Exactly. And it's almost like the ancestors were talking to them, right? Mm-hmm. And tell them just that's it. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. And so when she was telling me this over the phone, I'm in New Hampshire, she's in California. I'm like, "Granny, that's not helpful." She's like, "Baby, I don't know what to tell you."
Oh my God. Oh, I can hear her. Oh, oh.
Like, you just gonna have to taste it and see. And I was like, okay, all right. So that taught me a lot right there in terms of cooking. It was a passion, and it was a moment where you were just in touch, and it was spiritual. Cooking is spiritual, and I appreciated that from her.
I am just over here delighted and beaming because,
What you beaming?
I never made a connection between the way they would just, when I say they, I mean everybody's grandmother. They made, especially coming from the South, like if your parents, your grandparents, great grandparents were from the southern states or the Midwest, they just may not have had those little fancy measuring spoons and this and that. And so they learned to make do. But then, just like you said, they were in communion with the making of the food. It wasn't just, throw something together. That's why now, shoot, oh goodness,
Yeah.
you're just opening my mind right now, because when I think of soul food, I just know soul food, soul food, soul food. But right now I'm like, oh shoot, that was communion food. That was food where they were like really communing with the result they want to produce. And I'm sure that's all chefs. I'm not saying that's unique to only Black African American cooks, but what I'm saying is you just got me to see what soul food really stands for. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it was a rich experience. And when you're little, you don't really appreciate it as much as you should. And I didn't really know what was happening. But now I'm at home on Thursdays and Fridays, and I'm taking collard greens and putting smoked turkey leg in it, and really just taking my time. Nothing that I cook is rushed through, because you can't rush through really good food. And I'm hoping that the food gets to a place to where it begins to heal people, because that's the whole point, right? So I'm praying over the food. I'm hoping that whoever it touches, it would bring stability to them, wholeness, it satisfy hunger, because we get to feed the homeless on Fridays through City Catering. We donate at least 50 to 60 meals every week to helping our homeless neighbors. And the same food that we make for people who are paying, we make for those who are homeless. So I just love it. I love it. And my grandfather used to cook too, in mass production. Like, he worked at institutions where he had to cook and feed a lot of food. So not only do I know how to cook a little bit of food, now I know how to cook a lot of food as well to feed a lot of people. So I really enjoy
awesome.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
So now, when this is over, I didn't realize you were in Compton. You just down the 91. And I'm just saying right now, you just gonna have to let me know when I can buy one of these meals you making.
Every Friday.
Okay. But I have to ask you this, because I know about those trips to the store. And for those who've never been sent, and I'm gonna say it just like this, those who've never been sent by a woman, by a grandmother to the store with very specific instructions on what to get, I want you to share one item that she would tell you, and like be real specific about it. Because I know about that. Like, if you're gonna get the greens, make sure you get the greens with the leaves like this, and make sure they don't have
That is exactly the story I'm thinking about. So
please tell me.
She would send me to Petrini's. She was in San Francisco, and so Petrini's was one of the stores back in the day. And she would say, get the collard greens. But she said, baby, don't buy the collards if they look like a truck or something ran over them. She's like, don't bring in any collards that look unhealthy. So they had to have full leaves. Their stems had to be fully green. And she's like, make sure you bring collards. Don't bring me any mustards, and don't bring any Chinese mustards over here. I need collard greens. So she was very specific. And there were no telephones. So it wasn't like you could take a picture and walk to the store like today. You had to go off memory. You had to know what was it. And she'll send you back if you didn't get what she wanted.
I'm just cracking up because I already know that. I know that face you would have made at 10, 11, 12, looking at the greens. And maybe it's like a whole, you got a whole little slat of the greens, but you see only two that really meet her requirements. But she asked for four. You
That's
can't
right.
call and you're sitting there. Do I only get the two? Do I try to find the two best of the ones that I know she don't want? I know all about it.
Yep. And then on the way home, you're all freaked out that you didn't do a good job and all that stuff. But man, when I mean to tell you, it changes you. It changes you when you have those interactions with your ancestors. It just changes you.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. So now is when I ask about accomplishments. And I ask this question in two parts. First, an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, and then an accomplishment that is the one that others seem to be most either impressed by or the one that gets the, oh, or wow. So let's start with the first. Which accomplishment are you most proud of? It means the most to you personally.
I would say that the accomplishment that I'm most proud of is adopting my two sons. I was previously married, I have a former marriage, and we adopted my son. He's 17 now. And after that marriage, I adopted another young man who's in his teenage years, and he happened to be a student at the school where I was a principal. And he is currently 31.
Wow.
And those two decisions in my life were the things that I'm most proud of, and probably some of the best decisions that I've ever made. I've always wanted to adopt ever since I was little, even before I was 18 years old. I don't even know how that even happened. Maybe because my grandparents and my auntie always had foster kids. And so there were always additional kids who were around who weren't, blood related, but they were definitely family. I think that's where that came from. And so I love both my sons. I don't get to see my youngest son because he's with his mom. But my eldest son, DeAndre, he is a joy. He's a little challenging in the beginning, a little knucklehead, but as we all are. But it's just been beautiful watching him grow into a man and to own his manhood and to make really good decisions, and now be a father to his daughter, my granddaughter. So
nice. What about the accomplishment that tends to wow others?
So in 2001, I moved from Southern California back to my hometown, Oakland, and I had the opportunity to start a charter school in the middle of the hood in East Oakland. It's a brand new building that was built, $9 million building, first high school built in Oakland, California in over 40 years at the time. And it housed Black and brown students. We had 248 students. I'll never forget that number, grades 6 through 10. That's how we opened. We barely got through the board vote, Oakland Board of Education. We won the vote. Once the vote happened in December, they started building the school, and we opened in September, which, as you know, is a very fast turnaround.
We moved schools, and I requested attach my projector to the ceiling like all the other classrooms because I'd had one at the old school, and they moved us. And it's been a year and 5 months since I made that request, still waiting. So they built a school in how many months?
That's how it goes, though. That's how it is in public education, as you know, which is why this moment in time was so huge for the community. The charter management organization was really, really good to me in terms of providing leadership. They let me help them design the school. And so I had input in terms of, well, the computer room can go here, what colors do you want in the room to create vibrancy and awareness? Like, it was down to the T. They let me look for my own teachers because I wanted people who were open-minded and who were thoughtful and forward-thinking. And so we had a whole bunch of folk. It was like a rainbow teaching everyone. And it was so powerful, the team coming together, because we were all different from different backgrounds. But one thing we had in common is we really wanted this to succeed. And so for 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, we had 100% four-year college acceptance rate.
Woo!
Yes. So, and I attribute that to the teachers, the parents, and the students who did the work. And I would probably say that is the one that people are most proud of when they hear that accomplishment. And so now my students are running the world. They work for the city of Oakland. They've got four-year degrees. They've got master's degrees. They're, running businesses and nonprofits. And it's just.
And just to be clear, the students that came to your charter school are the same students that would have gone to any public school in Oakland.
That's right. That's right. They're the same students. We didn't do any creaming of the crop. We took all the special ed students. We took all the students who couldn't speak English. We took whoever it was that signed up. We took them in wherever they were, and we met them there.
Cool. Let's talk about words. What's a favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, you do better. That is Dr. Maya Angelou. And I love it so much because it speaks of hope, it speaks of responsibility, and it speaks of self-discipline. And so whenever I'm in circle, in community, which I sometimes call circle, this is one of the things that we do. And a call and response, I'll say, do the best you can until you know better. And then the students would say, and when you know better, you do better. And I'll just keep it going. Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, you do better. Right?
I like that. Yeah.
And it's fun. And they start beating on the desk and putting their little beats together and their own feel to it, the percussion and all that stuff. And so it becomes, an anthem, so to speak.
Yes.
And it allows you to have a positive message sink in without you preaching at someone, telling someone what to do. I truly believe that the beauty and the power of people is always inside of them. And it is our job as educators to come alongside and help unearth that beauty, that power, that curiosity, and that greatness, because it's already there. If we're made in the image of God, it has to be already there. So I think the problem with education is that we're always trying to stuff something down somebody's throat and force kids, adults, to live, be, and do a certain way instead of pulling the greatness out of them and just coming alongside of them. And so any opportunity that I can get to remind people of that, I do that.
Wonderful, just wonderful. What is an event, moment, conversation, or person that had a significant impact on your life or changed the trajectory of your life?
So that's easy. My mother. I wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for my mother. My mother in my ninth grade. So I went to a junior high. I went to McChesney Junior High. They had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then you would do high school, 10, 11th, 12th grade. So my 9th grade year was the last year of junior high, and you're supposed to go to the next step, right? And so the high school to go to in Oakland was Skyline High School. Skyline was in the hills. They had better teachers. They had better resources. And then the foothills, they had Fremont High. And Fremont High didn't have necessarily a good reputation. My mom saw that I was serious about education. And so when I didn't get into the lottery, the open lottery for Skyline, she knew I was devastated, but she knew I'd suck it up and go to Fremont. But of course, Miss Evelyn Taylor, she wasn't having it. So unbeknownst to me at that time, she goes and contacts somebody that she met, wasn't even a really good friend, and found out that her son went to St. Mary's College High School in Berkeley, California. And we were at her house. The next thing I knew, we were having dinner and learning about the school. Next thing I knew, I was taking a placement test, and I was admitted to first private school I'd ever been to in my life, Catholic school. And I was just curious how she was able to pull this off, because I know how much my parents make. And so my mom took on a second job. She learned how to do real estate, self-taught herself, passed the exam, and got a job. Just took on that debt and that responsibility so that I could go to a private school. And when I mean to tell you, I will never forget that, ever. It changed everything for me. I was introduced to another world that I would not have ever been introduced to if I were in a traditional public school. I was able to travel to Europe. I went to Spain. I went to France. I went to England. I visited the White House and represented my school because I was the student body president elect. Opportunities like this just don't happen all the time. And so I'm just really, really grateful that she saw enough in my education and my love of learning that she took on an additional burden to help me.
What your mom took on, it just speaks volumes for how committed she was that you have the life of your choosing.
Exactly. And she was a checker at Lucky's. I don't know if you guys remember that
I
supermarket.
do.
And
Mm-hmm.
before that, it was Safeway. So she stands up on her feet all day, 40 plus hours. She would take Sunday shifts so that she could do double time, so that she could bring in that extra cash, and I'm just watching this, this whole thing unfold. And I'm like, she's a beast. Like she's putting in work. And so when my mom used to ask me for stuff, I'd be like, whatever, like whatever you want. Like it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even matter. Like, so the finish the story, I'm at St. Mary's, I'm valedictorian, I'm student body president, and I get my acceptance letter to Dartmouth College and to UCLA. And I didn't get into Stanford, their loss. But I got those letters, and I was about to go to UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And my black principal pulled me aside and he says, let me tell you something. He says, you can go to UCLA and you'll do well and you'll get the degree. But if you go to Dartmouth, you'll never have to worry about anything for the rest of your life. And that's all I remember. That's all I remember. He just pulled me aside and said that.
Given what those words that your principal spoke, and now that you've gone and come back, for people who don't know what they mean when they say, and you'll never have to worry about anything again, can you say it in your words? What
Yeah,
is meant by that?
definitely. What he was saying is that I will have leverage and I will have influence and backing that I would not have anywhere else. And that I would be able to construct and design my own career the way I want to design it because of the pedigree that I have. And as a young kid who's 17, 18 years old, I had no idea what he was talking about. But when I got to Dartmouth and Chinua Achebe was teaching one of the classes that I was signed up for, and I was able to read Things Fall Apart by the actual African author.
Right.
Things began to look a little bit different when I would go into the frat houses and I would rub elbows with the Rockefellers' descendants and things of that nature. Like it's it was like real life. Presidents' kids go to this university, and these are the types of experiences that I was becoming used to. And I'm just a kid from East Oakland.
I think you would agree with me when I would say it doesn't make you a member, but you become an affiliate.
Right. You do. And people trust that if you've gone through that for 4 years, then
Mm-hmm.
you know how to play the game.
Thank you. That's well said. That is well said. That is well.
And
Oh,
that's what I tell the kids. I told them this too. I said, education, going to college, it's a game. And you just have to realize which game or what part of the game you want to be a part of. If you want to go and play the Ivy League game, then you're going to put in some time and you're going to do things, and it might be a little harder than playing another game, or a little different than playing the other game. If you want to do Cal State, that's cool too. If you want to do University of California, if you want to do HBCU, learn the game, whatever you're doing, because it's your money.
And it's also true that even if you're not going to go to college, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, there's still a game. And the bottom line is, whatever you're going to do, there's a game. Don't just show up like there's no game. There's a game. Know the game.
Exactly. And so that's why for Unearth and Empower Communities, we've created 3 pathways. You can go to college after high school, you can start your own business, or you can get a job.
Yes.
Not everybody has to go to college. And I think that's a misnomer that we tell our kids. But for me, in that particular time, college was still working in a viable way. Right now, if I had to do this all over in 2020, I'd be online somewhere and I'd be trying to figure out what my passion is, and I'd be moving by that passion and educating and self-educating myself.
And I want to move on to the other questions, but I do want to say one of the things what you just said points to is that the economy has shifted. When it not that it still doesn't make a difference to get into certain areas with, by going to the best college you can go to if that's your route, but the opportunities to earn, it's kind of like a new gold rush. It's an information gold rush, and you don't have to have that avenue right now. Now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, it might be the same game all over again. The only way to go into computers or YouTube videos or podcasting or whatever is to go to college. But for right now, new wild, wild west, people.
Yep, exactly. Build your aspirations around what works for you and what not around what has worked traditionally.
Yes, well said. So, Barak, what's an experience that highlights or signifies the experience of being a Black man in the United States?
I thought a long time about this. Is a hard question. I would definitely say that joining Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity at Dartmouth College definitely highlights my experience as a Black man in America. And I was trying to put my words together to figure it out, and I think it was because this was the first time that I realized that I was really Black. And I know that sounds really crazy.
Nope.
But I'm from California, and I'm from a blue state, a progressive state, a multicultural city where my best friend was Latino, Mexican specifically. My other best friend was a white female who's lesbian. And so the people around me were not always just Black. And so I had so many cultural influences that it wasn't always my deal or my thing to dive into my African culture. It was just living in the culture that I was presently in, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went away to college, and there were these factions of people, the Black people were here, the Native Americans were here, the Latinos were over here, the white people were over here, the nice white people were over here. And I was just like, this is a different experience, and I need some community. And Kappa Alpha Psi became that community for me. And I didn't know anything about fraternities and sororities and specifically traditional Black fraternities and sororities. I had no idea. And so when I got there and I experienced that culture And I just fell in love with the authenticity of what it meant to express yourself and be Black. And so I joined the African American Society. What it showed me, because at this time, and this is the part that I mean in terms of becoming Black, there were people from Haiti, from Jamaica. These are the backgrounds that they come from. So they were in touch with their cultural heritage in terms of when we were talking, and they were introducing me to things like Ujima was the dance troupe that I joined. And so I didn't even know that that was a principle of Kwanzaa until I joined that group. You know what I'm saying? And so just learning the language in African culture and the history beyond slavery, because all they teach you in school is slavery on, because that's all colonized Europeans want you to know. And so it was just an amazing opportunity to delve into my true identity and discover who I am as a Black man and what that represented.
Nice. It's the same 11 questions all the time, but you know, you're the first to touch on that aspect. And you know, I just love that someone who doesn't even realize that they don't know what it is to be Black, you know, that they're Black, but it hasn't even crossed their mind to consider how much more they could know, that they will hear this and maybe be curious about that.
Yes. And so then I started, after, of course, years later, I'm thinking, I've gotten this degree from this Ivy League institution. And I was like, you know what? I really crave the experience of a HBCU. And I said, if I ever had to get my doctorate in education, I would do so from an HBCU, just because that's an experience that I want to own and I want to have because of the rich history that it provides. And I'll give you a very quick story.
Please.
So when I got accepted into Dartmouth, what they do is they fly you out, or they used to. They flew out all the Black kids who got accepted to see if this was a place that they would like to come. So I actually got the phone call before I got the acceptance, which was crazy. And so when I get out there, all the Black students pulled me aside, and the rest of us who were invited, and they said, this was during the South African apartheid. So the African American Society had done a demonstration on the green, you know, which is the middle of campus, where they put up shanties as a protest against apartheid, and for the United States and all colleges associated with apartheid to withdraw so that apartheid would go away. And so they staged a demonstration, they had the shanties, and they told us that the newspaper, one of the racist newspapers on the campus, burned down the shanties maybe a couple of weeks before we got there. So if you come here, they said, please make sure that you know that you are up against the fight if you are to come here, because it's going to be like this the entire time. So even that type of knowledge, I think, is just really important for us to know. And I was so glad that there were other Blacks who came before me who were willing to tell us the truth about what it means to be on a predominantly white campus.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that leads into, have you had any experiences with law enforcement? And if so, what can you share?
So I don't have the gruesome stories with law enforcement personally.
Yeah, that's fine. And you know, and I love that you said that, because while this is about highlighting the increased probability of a Black man being stopped by the police, it's also good for people to know that it is not everywhere, because that would actually be even more depressing if there was never a story. There were never Black men who didn't have, you know, these, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm tongue-tied.
No worries. Yeah, who've had negative experiences. I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been handcuffed, but I have been thrown onto a cop car and threatened while I was in my 20s, but that was the extent of it. And
Well,
that,
share a little bit about that, if you would.
I think I was speeding. I'm trying to remember it specifically. I was either speeding or made a left turn or a wrong left turn or something like that. And they pulled me over and they were just, they were just mean. I think I was in East Palo Alto. Yeah, I think I was in East Palo Alto, and they were just rude, but they didn't have anything on me. So that it didn't go any further than that, but it freaked me out. It scared me to the point to where I do have trauma still from it. And every time that a cop car is by me, I always tense up.
Well, can you, if you don't mind, I am going to ask you to expand on the description here, like, because part of what this is, Barak, is that when white folks listen, I actually find it important that they know that it's not just the guns in the face and all of that, that it's this experience of being potentially harassed at any moment.
Yes, yes. And the stress that comes from that. So I was pulled over, I got out, they put me onto the top of the cop car. They did not handcuff me. I asked them why I was pulled over. They gave me some excuse of a light I ran or a left turn or something. And to be quite honest, I don't remember it, but I just go with it at the time because I was a little freaked out and I was nervous and I didn't know what was really going on. So like,
How old were you?
I was like no older than 23. And I'm not like, I wasn't into anything that was illegal or anything like that. So I'm like, what's going on? And I had no reference for it, right? This is like my first time that I'm actually going through this. And nobody talks about it in our community or hadn't talked about it. And so I didn't really share with too many people. And it was just, I think what it did for me is it created this unneeded trauma for law enforcement. So every time that I see, they could be white, black, I don't care what they are, what color they are. I don't like policemen. And because I don't trust them because of their that one interaction that I had with them. That's the best way. That's the best way I can say it. And then
that's perfect.
And then when I see other people have interactions with them that don't look like me, who are not my color, and they always seem to be so peaceful, I'm like, well, why did I get thrown on to the top of the cop car when I was in my 20s? So it just makes you think a lot in terms of the racial disparity and a lot of the trauma that Dr. Joy DeGroot talks about in post-traumatic slave syndrome. And why we need to talk about the experiences and deal with the healing part of being Black in America.
Yeah. So, Barak, if the United States was a woman with whom you could speak, whether mother, lover, neighbor, stranger, friend, whatever, what would you say to her?
First of all, I just think that's the dopest question ever. So thank you for creating it. And I did spend a lot of time thinking about this. And I think my answer is, you have mothered everyone else. When are you going to mother Black people? Because stepchildren need love too.
That's me snapping. Yeah.
That's my sentiment that I take with that. Yeah, I'll just leave it right there. When are you gonna start mothering Black people? Because you've mothered everyone else. All the immigrants, I won't say other immigrants because we're not an immigrant.
Right.
All the immigrants, all the descendants of founding fathers and Native.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's the thing, let's be clear. They look, America, the United States, They were kind of nasty to the Chinese. They're kind of nasty to Italians. They've been nasty to people. You get nasty and then you get over it. What's up with us?
And you know what? And I just think it's that thing, right? It's like everyone else had a choice to come here. We only people who did not have a choice to come here.
So what is love to you?
Love is the action of speaking life into someone or something. And you choose it. You choose to love. And it involves a huge amount of vulnerability and hope and justice. And you choose those things. And I believe that if we all loved a little bit more, I think that we could solve a lot of the problems, because love encompasses and embodies a lot of the characteristics of who I believe God is. So I just see God in people, and that's what I choose to see in people. And when I don't see that in people, I have to check myself, because there's obviously something going on. And I think what I've been previously prone to do is to judge the person for my inability to not see their worth. And I think that is one of the things that's crippling this nation currently, is we're always judging the people who we're not familiar with, or who we may not understand, or who may not look like us. And we're not choosing to love, we're choosing to judge. So that's what I think love is the action of speaking life into someone or something.
Man, you just said a definition that I stand by. So whether it comes from your profession, your past experiences, your studies, or your adventures, what is something that you think more Black men should know? And, for my listeners, whatever comes out of your mouth next is for all of us. But what do you think more Black men should know and don't?
I think more Black men should know the beauty of Sankofa. Sankofa is comes from Africa. It's the name of a bird that they speak of in terms of return and get it, right? And so I believe that there is a lot of our future that would be influenced better if we knew who we were previously in the past. And I think what has, obviously, for United States, for Americans, Black Americans, we've been stripped of our language, our culture, our identity. And so we have to return to our past in order to move towards our future. But what we're being told is that we just need to focus on our future and forget our past. But what's killing us is that we're not dealing with the beauty of our past, and we're not dealing with the trauma of our past and the power of that circle. And that's something that I believe that I would tell everyone, and that I'm learning to live by is Sankofa, returning to the past in order to move toward our future.
Yeah. I think about Jews and how they treat the Holocaust. They are straight on with it. There's no shame in it for them, because it's the Germans. And somehow, because racism is about hating a race, I think it's somehow caused us to feel that a straight on look at slavery is somehow a painful look at us for having been enslaved, versus a straight on look at what happened and who did what.
That's right. That's right. Because then you would control the narrative. And that's what is most important, is who is controlling the narrative. And that's why American education is very slanted and very not helpful for people of African descent to sit through some of those courses and classes, because of the perspective and the narrative that is told to them. It's just insult upon injury. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about reparations. You talked about the Jewish people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in 1952, the United States gave Germany $822 million for the Jewish Holocaust survivors. Okay? $822 million to the Jewish Holocaust survivors. In 1971, the United States gave 1,044 million acres of land to the Alaska Natives land settlements. And it just goes on. 81 million to the Klamaths of Oregon, 105 million to Lakota of South Dakota, 12.3 million to the Seminoles of Florida, 31 million to the Chippewas of Wisconsin, 230 million to the Japanese Canadians in 1988, 25 million to Austria this time for the Jewish Holocaust survivors, and then 1.2 billion to Japanese Americans, who had 110,000 people interned for 4 years, land confiscated, right? And then there's $20,000 they gave per survivor. Now I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm like, not one time do I see anybody Black listed for these. Now, this is money that has been given away, American money from our budget. And not one time is there an African American listed here. And I just think if there is no more blatant representation of discrimination against Black people, this is it right here. This is it. Because put your money where your mouth is. And that's what the United States did. But they won't deal with the blood that was spilled on their own land. We won't do it. We're a very proud people. So we're not going to deal with that. But if we go do it somewhere else, that's great. But in terms of dealing with the blood that's spilled here that we caused initially to build this land, yeah, we're not going to deal with that. And I think that's the thing that's why we're in this place that we are currently, is because you got to deal with the original bloodshed until you own that. I mean, they didn't steal slaves. They stole kings and queens and governors and business owners and fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, and brought them over here and stripped them of everything. And there's still nothing that has been addressed. And I just think it's a really sad place. And it's one, and they still can't understand why we're so angry. So.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate thank you for dropping the numbers, like real numbers. It puts reparations in a different light when you have a context of other examples, right?
Right.
So first, thank you for that. But then the way that you just in saying they didn't bring slaves here, that just is such a simple statement. And I got to tell you, it's like, it sounds so foreign. It's like this is the first time I heard it, because it's just not how we think about it. You know, that you followed it with, they brought kings and queens and businessmen and educators and medicine people who understood, great cooks, great chefs, like all the things that were brought, great tradesmen.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're pointing to in saying that is part of the lie that keeps us from really dealing with enslavement versus slaves, because when you because it's almost as if, I just think about some of the pictures that still get placed in textbooks, and they're these like crude drawings, right, of half-dressed Africans. And what that statement that you said made is it puts more flesh on the knowledge of harm. I mean, I should be embarrassed to say this, but I will say that I just caught my own brainwashing in that there's this sense of that the people who were brought over, there was nothing else they were doing before. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
it sucks.
right.
It sucks that these people who didn't have anything going on were treated so badly, versus you took people who were thriving. And
Yes.
yeah.
And the foundation of our world. Like, so Africans, as you know, discovered everything. We discovered math, we discovered medicine, we built universities. Before there was Egypt, there was Kemet, there was Nubia, richest places on earth in terms of resources, waterways, talking about creating paper to write with, thoughts,
Empires.
Yes, just crazy, just everything. And then the Greeks came and got the information and gave us credit for getting the information, and then built their own language from the African language. So when we talk about what happened, people have to tell the entire story. And I think that's the part that is so frustrating, especially for many historians and people of African descent who know the real truth. They're like, this is a lie. This is a straight up lie. And until we deal with this lie, you're never going to be able to get me to recite these things about American justice. I'm just not going to do it. And for one, and these are the types of things that I discovered when I was at Dartmouth, when I was with other Black people, that this is my heritage, and that I've been dealt a dirty hand of cards in terms of what I can pull from. And so I am really grateful for just continuing this conversation, because more of our people need to hear this in terms of where we come from. It's just powerful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, every episode has its unique flavor, and I'm just, So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So here's, we've come to the end of the conversation. And well, it's funny because just in what you just said, it's like I can't even really say we've come to the end of the conversation, but we have come to the interview of this interaction right here for the podcast. And I just need to say to you, Barak, that your love of community, of the Black community, is so, it's like a sunshine. Like, that's, I often think in pictures, as many of us do, but when I think about your commitment with the organizations that you founded, with what you saw from your grandparents and then owned for yourself.
Yeah.
It's like you beam sunshine out into the world. And that sunshine is a love of our community. And so I thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the platform.
Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. I certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.